Hi, everybody. Welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. We're going to let folks take a few more minutes to get in and join the webinar. In the meantime, we'd love to hear where you're joining us from today. Drop your location in the chat. We'll use that feature a bunch today, so if you have questions, feel free to drop those in there. We'll officially kick off at about 2 minutes past the hour. We have, I'm sure, far too much to cover today, even though I tried to keep it well bounded. So definitely get your questions in early. If we don't get to all of them in time, we'll definitely make sure to circle back, follow up with you directly. But yeah, feel free to drop where you're joining us from into the chat, and we'll get started in just a minute. Riz, do you want to share where you're joining from?
Yeah, coming in from Denver, Colorado. A nice sunny day here.
And I'm over in San Francisco. So good morning to everyone who's still joining from the West Coast.
Good afternoon to the East Coast.
A couple of other Denver and Bay Area folks, Charleston, San Diego, New York City. Fantastic. A lot of familiar names on here. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody. More from Chicago. Welcome. Okay. Yeah, I feel like we're chronically under time, and I want to make sure we leave at least a little bit of time to get questions in at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. But welcome all to our quick and focused webinar on EcoVadis disclosure and the key updates that you need to know for 2025. We're really leaning into this new format, 30 minutes packed with insights. So we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today in this series. If you've already been with us for CVP, fantastic, welcome back. We'll be doing more of these. I'll talk about that at the end. But just jumping right into our agenda, we're going to cover three main areas. First, Andrew will deliver EcoVadis 101, the basics on the platform, scorings, ratings. Then we'll talk about key changes in 2025, and then I'll highlight how Green Places can support your submission. So we'll wrap with a live Q&A. Feel free to ask questions anytime using the chat feature, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. We will share the recording afterward, and I'm going to pivot us over really quickly to a poll. Before we dive in fully to what's new in 2025, let's take a quick pulse check. And actually, I'm sorry, I don't know if I skipped a slide or something, but I didn't introduce myself or lovely Riz here. So while you're answering the poll, let me just start really quickly. My name is Corinne Hansen. I'm the VP of Sustainability at Green Places. I oversee our carbon accounting team and all of our ESG strategy work. And I'm joined here by Riz, who is our new Director of Reporting. Riz, you want to give a little intro?
Yeah, sure. Glad to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, I've just been came out of consulting and joined Green Places just about 8 weeks ago. It's been a flurry of activity recently, um, helping customers understand kind of these different disclosure frameworks, voluntary, involuntary, with CDP, EcoVadis, and climate risk, as well as target setting with SBTI. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak to you today and hope that we are educational for you.
So folks should have had a poll pop up to ask about, have you participated in EcoVadis assessment before? Hopefully you can all see the results. Yes, multiple times. That feels right and true based on the audience that I'm seeing pop up on the screen here. I guess just once, or a couple of no's, planning too soon or still exploring, which I imagine is why you're here. So I won't delay us any further and I'll dive right in. EcoVadis is definitely a very popular reporting framework. We've tried to focus this series on the ones that are in highest demand. EcoVadis is a global sustainability rating and assessment platform that evaluates companies' environmental, social, and governance performance. It's widely used by businesses to assess supply chain sustainability and involve corporate sustainability. While many companies use EcoVadis ratings to credential their sustainability programs, they also leverage ratings to ensure their suppliers meet ESG standards. So this is your classic example of a reporting framework that's used as a supplier engagement tool. Investors and ESG analysts use ratings as well as assessment responses directly to evaluate corporate ESG risks. a couple of stats from 2024, just to give you a sense of the scale and breadth of the platform. You can see on the screen here, something that often comes up as a question in our interactions with clients is who's submitting to EcoVadis. Geographically, we certainly see a lean toward the EU, with about 55% of respondents in 2024 coming from that region. The next largest is APAC with 23%, and the Americas at 20%. We'll try to get some more trends going and share those, but we are seeing a lot of conversation around using EcoVadis to engage suppliers sort of as the default rather than creating your own supplier engagement program. And so we do expect those numbers, especially in the States, to continue to go up rather than developing your own system. But let's talk a little bit about the questionnaire. One key differentiator about EcoVadis, as compared to many other reporting frameworks, is that it is unique to the registrant, to the submitter. You get custom questionnaires. So there are several different criteria that impact the structure and makeup of the EcoVadis questionnaire. For those of you that have already submitted, you're well familiar. Company size, industry type, country, etc. So everyone's questionnaire looks a little bit different. But let's dive right into the richer part of the discussion here and talk about demystifying the scoring a little bit. And so I'll pass over to Riz. Riz, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Corinne. So while the questionnaire can be different for different companies, it does align to the same four themes no matter what. So companies get evaluated based on these four themes, and then underneath those themes, there's 21 different criteria that kind of line up to those themes. But to Corinne's point previously, different criteria can be toggled based on the industry and the size of your company and things. So you may not have every criteria question in every theme. But essentially, each theme gets an individual score assessed for your company, and then you get an overall score out of 100 assessed. So it's basically a report card for your sustainability program, and you can receive your scorecard, and it's generally valid for 12 months. So some quick things, and we'll definitely get into this in more detail on scoring, but something unique about EcoVadis is every answer needs to be backed by documentation. So basically, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen according to EcoVadis. You can submit up to 55 documents in any given cycle. And typically you won't need that many. Most companies need somewhere between 8 and 22 well-chosen documents to get the job done. And you can link one document to multiple questions to sufficiently answer the different questions. So definitely there's a focus on working smarter, not harder with the EcoVadis questionnaire. And something else to note about the EcoVadis methodology is basically they're measuring the effectiveness of your sustainability management system. And so in order to do that, the expectation is that there are kind of three elements there. There's policies, and then actions, and then results. So within each theme, the four themes that we just shared in the slide before, you'll have questions that are testing the policies, the actions, and the results of your program. So it's a matrixed approach. It can sometimes be confusing about where you draw the line between what's a policy and what's an action or a measure and what's a KPI or a result. But it's really based on a very simple kind of PDCA or plan, do, check, act method, which underpins most management standards used by like ISO, if you're familiar with that, and other certifying bodies. So those three management layers are kind of then further broken out into 7 management indicators. There's a lot of like nested criteria here, but essentially your policies or endorsements, any public commitments you've made, that's good evidence for your policies as well as kind of your documentation. Then you've got your measures, any certificates you have from third parties like assurance statements, and then coverage over the organization that you have of those documents. And then typically on the results side, it's your external facing reports, things like a CDP report or an annual sustainability report or any other kind of published data. Sometimes it's exported results from internal platforms that you use to track surveys and things like that with your employees. So that's typically kind of what the evidence looks like on that side. So now let's talk about scoring and specifically medals and badges. We all love recognition, and EcoVadis likes to give it out, but only when it's earned. So here's the breakdown. Starting at the platinum level, that's the top 1%, the 99th percentile of respondents across all industries. And then you've got the gold level or the top 5%, silver, the top 15, and then bronze is the top 35%. So any given year, obviously the actual score that you get could put you into the percentile for some of these metals. As we mentioned earlier, the average score last year was 53 out of 100. So in order to qualify for a medal, this is key. You need to score above 30 on every theme. If you score below 30 in any single theme, you're then ineligible for a medal. So you really can't have any weak links in your disclosure. So even if you're crushing it on environment, you'll want to ensure your ethics and procurement practices are also solid. And keep in mind that these scores reflect your management system at the time of the assessment. So timing and the documentation you submit definitely matters. Now, looking at badges, if you find you're ineligible for a medal or you don't achieve one on your first go, don't worry. EcoVadis has other ways to provide shareable recognition. You could still qualify for a badge if you meet minimum score requirements or show significant improvement from one assessment to the next. Now, certain industries do not meet sustainability criteria by default and are therefore excluded from EcoVadis rankings. Given that the use of tobacco and weapons products result in loss of human life, you can imagine they aren't scoring highly in the labor and human rights theme. Also, companies with significant operations related to fossil fuel extraction or energy generation will undoubtedly score low on the environment theme. So these criteria do get regularly reviewed and are subject to change, but this is kind of the current paradigm for eligibility. So if you're gearing up to do this, let's talk strategy. How do you give EcoVadis what they're looking for? There's some do's and don'ts here on the screen that you can see. Definitely do use formal company documents with your name or logo where possible. They're sticklers for this. Reuse documents across multiple questions as long as it's relevant. That'll help you keep under that 55 document limit. And then stick to your valid timeframes. So for policies and actions, usually within 8 years is acceptable. But then for results and KPIs, think annual reporting, they'll accept up to 2 years. And then for any certificates that you have, obviously, they can't be expired. Things that you should not do. Don't try to create documents just to submit them to EcoVadis. Don't game the system. It's obvious and ineffective. They don't really want to see non-relevant documentation. So financial statements, external events like employee volunteering isn't strictly relevant to your company's sustainability program. Although it often looks good in the annual report, it may not demonstrate what it needs to demonstrate for the themes that are asking for those questions. And then do not submit material from an affiliate company or a customer or supplier. It needs to reflect your operations. So really kind of the main idea here is remember just quality beats quantity. As much as you can, use the same document to map to multiple questions. One code of conduct document might be really useful for a lot of labor questions. So encourage you to think that way. Now, EcoVadis likes to keep us on our toes. So the methodology updates roll out quarterly, and yes, they can shift how your company is scored. They can change the questions themselves or the documentation required for those questions. So do want to cover some recent changes to be aware of. As of first quarter this year, they've loosened the rules a little bit on evidence. So for things like employee training certificates, they don't necessarily need to have your company logo anymore on those documents, as long as you have some other kind of supporting evidence. The other additional questions that have been updated within the kind of human rights criteria, there's been improved guidance released and kind of specific application for certain industries where those questions will show up. We've also reworded kind of some of the sustainable procurement questions and the options for policies and measures there. And then there's now enhanced recognition for companies demonstrating alignment with the most recently released ESRS and ISSB standards. So that can lead to a higher reporting indicator score within some themes where that's relevant. In prior quarters, some interesting things related to certain industries, the removal of pro bono options and legal industry questionnaires. This was actually a move that was made to simplify the questionnaire for those industries and aligns with other professional services industries. Um, Updated working conditions options to include actions to ensure adequate wages and actions to manage working hours and overtime, and then updated country risk profiles. So depending on the countries where you operate, your score can potentially go up or down, with specifics for places like Ghana, Poland, Uruguay, and Seychelles. And then in the third quarter last year, there were expanded industry classifications to improve kind of the granularity of the assessment. So that impacts kind of the nature of each company's specific questionnaire. Depending on what industry you select, the questions you get may be different. And then a big one that you'll see if you're doing this again this year, your scorecard now, the theme scores will be displayed as actually whole round numbers instead of rounded to the nearest tenth. So previously, you would only get like a 20 or a 30 or a 40 in a theme. But now you'll actually have the granularity to know where can you actually improve, between those ranges. And then finally, legal compliance documentation previously was not accepted, but now will be accepted. This was something actually driven by requirements of the CSRD. So now I think we'll hand it back to Corinne to talk about how Green Places can support.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions getting a little bit more into the weeds, and I do see a couple popping up in the chat. If you're feeling like EcoVadis disclosure is intimidating and laborious, we understand. That's exactly why we developed an offering around this, and I want to talk a little bit about that before we get into the questions. So we've been working through our partnership and then bringing Riz on board to develop greater reporting offerings and services in the same way that carbon accounting used to be a highly manual process, and we've worked over time to bring that into software, make this easier. The same intention is true of reporting. So right now we're offering a white glove reporting service, which is designed to make your life easier if you don't have bandwidth to take all of this work on internally on your own. We'll guide you through response strategies, request and review documentation, upload the documents to the portal on your behalf, and leave you with a roadmap for future improvement. And that part in particular, I think, is very relevant to the conversation around not doing things for EcoVadis' sake. They won't accept documentation that happens to be within a month of your submission. So a good thing about doing this way is that you'll have a really clear understanding of what you'd like to improve year on year and what needs to change. So we'll support you with that. So we're trying to work as your co-pilot on sustainability, and we will continue to pull more and more of that functionality into our platform over time. Happy to talk about that in detail with anyone individually. We are also in the process of confirming EcoVadis accreditation as a service provider. So if that's a requirement for your company for whatever reason, please let us know. Happy to talk that through. Our high-level project timeline for delivery is built to help you meet your EcoVadis assessment standard of 6 weeks. Obviously, if this is your first time, it could extend a little bit beyond that, but we'll make sure to keep you updated on progress throughout the engagement as we gather documentation, upload it to the portal, and do a final review and sign off. Can also help you navigate extensions should you need those. And lastly, a reminder that today's session is part of our ongoing mini-series covering essential sustainability reporting frameworks. You already signed up, so feel free to attend any or all upcoming sessions or just watch the recordings and share them afterward. Our next one will be on SBTI, Science-Based Targets, on June 5th. So with that, let's dive into some questions. Yeah, we're happy to get into the weeds here. Riz, I don't know if you want to take the first one. Let's maybe move over to the webinar chat, and I'll get our Q&A open. Oh. My computer is glitching and I can't actually see the questions anymore.
Yeah,
Are you
what
able to?
questions do we have?
Yeah, so from the Q&A, I have one. If a law firm can measure that greater than 20% of its revenue comes from deals permitting and benefiting fossil fuel companies to continue emitting, would that make the firm ineligible? And I think the implication here is around the badging, so, ineligibility around badging.
That's right. Yeah. To be clear, you're not ineligible to reply to the survey. And to the extent that the questionnaire is or scorecard is still useful for you to share with your customers. I think it's a worthwhile exercise. It's just that the badging and the medals you would not be eligible to receive.
Next up, how can companies prove they have policies when it is against the company rule to share policies? I think this is a common hurdle that we get. You're going to have to balance the requirements from presumably your legal teams to not share and disclose information with EcoVadis's ability to score you. If you're not able to disclose something, they're not able to score you on that basis is basically the short answer. That said, I think understanding the scoring fully and knowing where you can kind of pick and choose your your battles with your own teams internally to say we're really on the precipice of a stronger score here. This matters for this amount of revenue of our suppliers that want to see it, or our partners that want to see it. You can start to decide what actually makes sense.
Yeah, great answer. Looks like the next one is CDP as a small business option, does EcoVadis? And I think maybe we breezed through this in the beginning of the slides, but in terms of pricing, there are various tiers with EcoVadis. And also, again, the questionnaire itself is going to morph based on things like your company size. So you'll put in kind of your number of employees. They do it based on ranges. But number of employees, the industry that you work in, the geographies where your company it operates, all of those things then will drive the pricing and the questionnaire itself. And so certainly for smaller companies operating in fewer jurisdictions, you'll see kind of a shortened version of the questionnaire. So more or less the answer is yes, but it's not as clear as kind of CDP, which really just has like the two options.
Yeah, that's great. Tactical question here. Can you get started on EcoVadis until the carbon footprint has been done? Short answer is yes. The carbon footprint and your greenhouse gas emission disclosure is a key component of the environmental section within EcoVadis. But depending on your timing, if you want to start gathering the other documentation and you think that's anticipated to take some time, it might be a really good idea to go ahead and kick that off, knowing that you're going to be able to upload your greenhouse gas information at a slightly later date. We also talked a little bit about extensions, but EcoVadis has made that component of the submission really, really easy. Riz, you'll have to remind me, you can extend without penalty a few times.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could basically double the standard kind of 6 week timeline on your own. Like there's a self extension capability, and then really, if you need more time, you can open a support case with EcoVadis directly, and they'll do that for you. I think there's an understanding that companies sometimes, especially if you're doing this the first time, you open it up, you don't know what you're going to need until you see the questionnaire, and it may take some time to go find that. So, yeah, don't be nervous about the timeline.
Next we have, is Green Places primarily a carbon accounting management platform, or are you incorporating full ESG within the platform now? Fantastic question. We've traditionally been primarily focused on carbon accounting as the building block and the keystone of sustainability strategy, but we've always tried to serve as much of the wider sustainability, when I use that sort of like John Elkington triple bottom line ESG sense. So we are now supporting, from a reporting framework's perspective, helping you source all of the documentation to answer EcoVadis, CDP, SBTI, and the California regulations, including climate risk assessment under 261, TCFD. So those obviously all incorporate a much wider remit than purely greenhouse gas accounting information, emissions data, and we will help you parse those documents and craft answers and responses to other frameworks, or with EcoVadis, upload appropriate documentation and demonstrate policies, action, etc. But please reach out if you have further questions on that. Beyond just supporting the reporting business travel emissions, does Green Places platform offer analytical capabilities or insights that could help companies identify potential opportunities for reducing their travel footprint? For instance, is it possible to model the carbon impact of shifting between different travel modes, like air versus rail for certain routes, within the platform to inform reduction strategies? So Thank you for that question. This is a really common one that comes up with clients and partners. The short answer of this is that we're still doing the modeling component of the impact of different reduction measures outside of the platform. And just as I mentioned, how much is moving into the platform and our roadmap over time, it's really important to us that we do that in a way that offers uh, intentional engagement, meaning that I don't want to move things too quickly into the platform for you to tick around with if it's going to mean that you're getting inaccurate answers and making business decisions. So we need to make sure our UI is really, really strong. And so that's why we're sort of being slower and thoughtful about how we incorporate that. The way that we're handling modeling and demonstrating impact of reduction looks and functions a little bit more like a consulting engagement right now. So happy to do that as part of your carbon accounting experience and reporting experience. Just work together to let us know what you need, and we'll make sure that you have planning at the timeframes that you need modeling out. Liz, you want to take our next question?
Yeah, does Green Places also support ISO 20121 certification? Good question. Should we? I think that's I'd put that back on the market here and see if that's something that you need help with. We can certainly explore, that opportunity. But it's not a service that we have standard right now, but we are in the business of making our customers happy.
Yeah, again, we do occasionally do carbon footprinting for events. And so if that's something that you need, again, we're doing that on a case-by-case basis. So happy to scope and frame. Um, Much of our team is ISO 1464 certified. We're very close and familiar with BSI. And so if that's a need and you have a specific scope and parameters for the types of events that you want to get certified, let us know. Let's talk it out. Um,
There's a question here about cost. Does it cost to respond to the EcoVadis scorecard if it's done into customer's request? I have to double check this, but I think I remember that it kind of depends on the customer tier that they're at because they have the ability to request a certain number of suppliers. So it depends what they're paying for, but we can follow up kind of on that question for you directly.
Okay, now I'm pivoting over to our webinar chat unless I'm missing anything in my view on the Q&A, Riz.
I think we went through all these.
Covered? Okay, great. Um, so how can companies realistically improve their EcoVadis score year over year? Are there any quick wins you'd recommend? Riz, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, so if you're doing this for the second or third or fourth time, start with your document library, take a look at the documents and the mapping to the questions. Um, were any rejected? Was a reason given from the assessor there? You may need to kind of review and shore up some of that documentation that you provided. Uh, Also, given the methodology changes every quarter, you may have new questions this year. And so coming up with ways to answer those questions certainly would be a way to kind of increase your score. And then, I think to the point earlier about kind of the internal political climate of like, hey, can we share this? Can we share that? Um, there may be battles that you couldn't fight prior year that you can fight this year in terms of getting more documentation shared. So I would look at opportunities there. But yeah, those three strategies that I would start with.
Yeah, I think this is like the main reason folks come to us, right? Help us improve our score. We did this the first time, it went okay. We want to understand. We're having a hard time parsing on our own. We always try to give accurate comparisons between CDP, EcoVadis, the different reporting frameworks. One thing that I do like about EcoVadis specifically is that it does have a view in platform of the documents themselves and why they're rejected or why you've scored that's in pretty plain language. And we found better consistency in EcoVadis than some of the other reporting frameworks, where you are definitely beholden to an individual who's assessing based on a framework. And so there is a certain amount of play there. So I would say agree, start there. And then uh, if you cannot share something, think about where you can level up action over time to improve year on year. That is really the intent of these reporting frameworks, is to give you guidance, something to measure against. and try to pick some low-hanging fruit. So it's not EcoVadis submission time, oh God, we've got to get everything going, but rather you do this so that you can look at a plan to implement over the course of the next year. Uh, Go ahead, Riz.
I was gonna maybe we have one time for one more question here, but there's a good one from Karina in the chat here. There's so many reporting frameworks out there. Do you have a matrix to share that speaks to the purpose of each one? Yes, we do. Please go to our website, check out the regulation radar. You can type in some details about your company, and it will provide you a briefing on all the potentially relevant regulations that you may need to respond to, as well as a nice synopsis of each one. And then we're happy to go into detail with you on those in terms of kind of your preparation to report.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this bite-sized EcoVadis webinar. I think these are pretty fun and quick and easy to do, but if you have specific questions that weren't answered or you want to talk about how this might work for you individually at your company, please reach out. The next webinar on SBTI is happening on June 5th, same time. Again, you should already be signed up automatically, but if not, feel free to email us at hello@greenplaces.com. And Kristen just dropped a link in the chat to Regulations Radar, but we'll send out the recording, we'll send out slides, and we'll be sure to send a link to Regulation Radar. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thanks, Riz.
Have a great one. Cheers.
Bye.